Welcome to the Virtual CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping service-based businesses achieve success. Are you a business owner interested in learning how to scale your business? Has your business reached over $1 million in annual revenue? Then this podcast is for you.
Hello and welcome from Las Vegas. We are doing our first live podcast today. So we have the whole team here and we are talking about retreats again. So excited to have the group here, and I'm going to start off the podcast with some bad news. So bad news is this Mike and Jody's last podcast. He keeps winning like he is last night, and then while we're here, he might be retiring from Summit. So I'm sure his luck will turn eventually. But I know we just did our last podcast where we talked about our director retreat. So this is actually a different retreat. We are now here in Vegas with our CFOs. So a smaller group of team members, or larger group of team members, but different topics, different stuff on the agenda. So I'm going to start with Adam to kind of talk about the difference between the director retreat and the CFO retreat and why we're doing two different retreats here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that they're all people-centric. So we're just trying to get to know the team and do those kind of things. So I think that's, no matter which retreat we're doing, that's kind of one of the main things. But the director's retreat was really more of kind of we were dealing with high-level strategy for the firm for probably, the next 2 to 3 years, getting a little bit more long-term, not focusing on anything really super tactical over the next 12 months. And then, of course, just having a really good time. We brought the families out so we could, get to know everybody really well. So it was more, that one's probably even more people-focused, I would say. And then the directors, now we're going to be talking about how we execute the next 12 months is really kind of the main focus.
So that's with the CFOs. Yeah, now that we're with the CFO group, we're going to talk about 12 months, direct strategy, and a lot of it piggybacks off what we did at the director retreat. A lot of those decisions we made at the director retreat are going to be talked about for the first time here. And I think that the really cool thing about this retreat, and I'm going to throw this over to you, Zach, is we're going to, a lot of the people at this retreat, there aren't a lot, but maybe 2 or 3 are just starting this week. And then there's a handful that we haven't, no one has met before, so they're friends for a couple months. So kind of talk about that dynamic, how that works.
Sure. Yeah. A couple people, their first day is today. So they will meet the team for the first time at our cocktail hour, which will be really cool. And obviously just a big reason why we do these things is so that we can get to know each other on a personal level outside of being on Zoom all day long. And so, yeah, this, we've got people who have been at the firm for a number of years and people who are just starting today. And this is a really good time, obviously, to catch up. We're coming off of a year of not seeing many people in person. So I think this is going to be a great experience for the entire team, especially for new people. I think this is a great experience for them, to start their summit days with.
So Jody, I want you to put you on the spot here. Give me an example of a time when you met a person for the first time and what it's like when you've been working with someone for even a year on camera, what it's like to meet that person the first time.
Yeah, and I can kind of relate back to when I worked in the corporate world. Where we just met with telephone, and on the telephone you'd talk to somebody, and I had this example. I talked to this person for probably 2 years straight. I'd never seen that person before, and then when I met that person for the first time, it was real awkward because the vision I had in my head was nothing like the vision that that person actually was. Completely the opposite in regard to the way that we work. Through Zoom and through video conferencing, you can really see facial expressions, eye contact, and you see the eyes. The only difference is you just don't know really how tall that person is. For instance, I met Chris for the first time, and it was as if we'd known each other, even though she'd only been here for a couple weeks. It's like we'd known each other, and there was really no difference. I could pick her out when she was walking up, and it felt very comfortable. And I think it felt very comfortable for her too, because she picked us out in a group, just sitting there at the table eating breakfast, and she'd never met us at all in person. And so I think the dynamics is very similar to being in an office dynamics, because again, you're on camera the entire time. So again, camera is one of the biggest things that, over the past few years for a virtual firm like ourselves. And it's been huge. I'd say really no difference than brick and mortar companies.
I don't know, the size thing kind of throws me off a little bit. So we joke about like making a picture frame and just making people like stick it over their head so we can just kind of focus on the face. Oh, that's who it is.
You're a lot taller than I thought you were.
Yeah, the height's the one that you can't tell on camera. Yeah, every time, someone I work really close with, and we've had her on the podcast before, is Lydia, and she's one of our account managers, project managers, and she's almost as tall as me. I was completely surprised. She's 5'11", really close to the height. I was not expecting that at all. And Adam and Jody said they've gotten better at the height thing, but not me. I was way surprised by that. So the next question is for you, Lily. So obviously planning for a group like this, is it different than planning for a director's retreat with families incoming? What's the thought process behind sending us to Vegas?
Well, thought process was, for the most part, there's quite a few people who enjoy gambling and nightlife and great food in this group. We also had some from delayed retreats from 2020 that filtered into this year and needed to use some credits and everything. So everyone was excited to actually have the trip happen because it got canceled in 2020. And then as far as the process goes, it's somewhat similar, but also different. I would say when you're dealing with families and a smaller amount of employees, the process tends to be a little bit more intimate and getting to know people's very specific needs. Whereas this is a little bit more logistical and just making sure everyone knows where to be and when, and still creative all the same, and sometimes a little bit more challenging in the sense of those who have been to Vegas, which is a much more popular destination than Bahamas, what haven't they done yet, and how can we put a spin on it? So different pros and cons.
I want to stick with the entertainment part. I think that's going to be the interesting part of this retreat. So let's start with meals. So I think one of the cool things that we do, I'm not sure all firms do it like this, is we actually do group dinners. And so instead of having all 20 people together every night at dinner, we kind of group up. Can we talk about that? And I think in my mind, again, I'm not a planner, but like Vegas is probably the perfect place for that. There's so many restaurant choices. But can you talk a little bit about how you choose those restaurants, how you group people together, and how exactly that works?
Yeah, the restaurant choices overall typically kind of based on how much money we have allotted to the meals budget. So that's part of it, along with walkability, making sure we're not sending people all the way to the other end of the strip. And then breaking everyone into groups. I know it's important for Jody and Adam to have, when you're sitting at a long table and there's 20 people sitting there, those conversations look a lot different than when you're sitting at a table with 6 people at your table, and you can really dive in and get to know someone a lot better. So divvying up those groups in that sense was, I know, important to both of you. And then just trying to get people's meal preferences, but also switching the group up so you don't have the same group with each other every single time. That was actually the most challenging part. It's like a puzzle. Yeah, I wish.
It seems like one of the big things there too is just making sure you have kind of a group leader, so like Jody and I try to make sure that we split up at all times. And I know, like, since we had 3, we have the 3 of us, just making sure that we're never at the table together. That way we're not, monopolizing the conversation or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it gives them an opportunity to really get to know each other a lot better, because again, the group dynamics, you're just really talking about the people right next to you, the 2 or 3 people that are sitting next to you if you're in a large group. Whereas when you're in a smaller group like this, the entire table is talking to each other. And then the fact that you're mixing and mingling people, which is pretty cool, because a lot of times, even in a virtual world, you talk to fairly the same amount of people. You may talk to 2 or 3 people daily, but you don't get a chance to really talk to the group as a whole. Whereas this kind of forces you into interacting with people you normally don't interact with. So I think the key there is kind of, that forced interaction, which is cool, but then it kind of puts everybody on the same playing field, and it gives everybody a chance to, basically participate.
Yeah, no, I would think, I know we have our happy hour today, so where everybody's kind of meeting up. I bet you I could draw a map right now of who's going to hang out with each other at that happy hour, and be pretty accurate for those who like to walk into that room. For these dinners, you do have that forced interaction. I know every retreat I've ever been to, there's always kind of that odd couple. They're like, wow, look how well those 2 are getting along. You never would have thought of it, but they went to that first dinner together and just end up really getting along well because of that. So the next topic I want to go into is still in the entertainment realm, but let's talk about, we're doing one big event in terms of going to a show. So I'm going to throw this over to you, Adam, talk about the importance of of doing that show and doing something that's fun that the whole group does. I know we've done this at every retreat we've gone to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just what it's about, just being fun and having a good time. Like the dinners, that's probably the more important part than don't get me wrong, there's big emphasis on what we're doing during the day. I think it's a great time for us to really focus on what we do. But the show is kind of just that cap, and that's why we do it at the end, because now everybody's broken into these smaller groups. They've got an opportunity to know each other and have fun and kind of see where that goes. And then whenever we put that event right on the back end of the retreat, it just seems like by the time you get to that day, everybody knows each other, they're having a good time. And it usually is just a nice send off for everybody.
Yeah, sure. So Zach, going over to you now, talking a little bit about that area. But oftentimes what I see is there's a lot of energy coming back from these retreats. I think a lot of it does come from the social aspect of it. Is that something you see company to company, and then how long does that normally last?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think that you just have to be really intentional about it. I mean, this is a huge investment in the team and in the company. We want to make sure that investment is doing good for the team, the culture, moving forward. And so, yeah, I think we see this just being a pivotal turning point. I mean, we still have people on the team who talk about retreats from 4 or 5 years ago. And so I think, yes, this is a great team building exercise, but more than that, an investment in in relationship with one another. And I think it really helps in, how we interact, how we trust one another. So I think just being intentional about what you do is obviously very important. And then, I think like just letting this kind of be a part of the culture is also just a huge benefit from it.
Yeah, we still always talk about the shoe and the safe incident, right? Where one of our directors had to show up to an event with the 2 opposite shoes on the street, so the shoes that didn't match because one of the guys the night before put his shoes in the safe and locked the door. So that's something we still talk about all the time. There's plenty of stories like that like you said,
well placed on that guy, because he's always a little bit grumpy anyway. So it played well the next day.
Sorry if you're watching.
He knows. So Jody, one of the things we talk about a lot in building these agendas is the difference between an online meeting and an in-person meeting. When we were going up creating this agenda, we said, what are the things that we need to be in person to talk about? Can you talk a little bit about that and what really makes a difference between a video topic and an in-person topic?
Yeah, great question. In reality, there's not a huge amount of difference, because a lot of what we can talk about during these retreats, we can also talk about online. So there's not a huge difference, a huge variance. But what this will allow us to do is allow us to get in the same room and kind of brainstorm together. It's a little different dynamic than, actually it's quite a bit different dynamic than being on a Zoom call, and it gives that opportunity. So I would say there's not a huge difference there, but it does allow us to do, different things, like Zach can introduce different psychology testing or business coaching. There's a lot of things we can do there that maybe we can't do. That's probably more a Zach question, I think, that would be mine.
Well, I was going to say, I know whenever we did the disc profile, I think just the physical nature of it. So, you're processing what you say we're doing, but whenever you had everybody get into different corners, like based on questions and stuff, I mean, it just brought a different element to if you saw it on a scatter chart or something silly like that, like people were physically kind of moving around and figuring out where they were. I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Well, and I think too, we're going to do a lot of breakouts. We're going to do a lot of teaching, but we're also going to be talking about how does this apply to me? So, when we talk about core values or delegation or time management, or what does effective leadership look like? We're going to talk in a group setting, but then we're going to break off and talk in groups and then come back. And there's just a little bit of that dynamic that is much easier to do when you're in person with one another, to kind of be able to read the room, put the right people with the right people, make sure that, like Jamie said, the groups of people that normally, get come together, like we're going to break that up a little bit so that we can hear different perspectives. And so, sometimes there's just that dynamic of being in the room with one another, especially when you're talking about hard topics that you don't talk about every day. That just makes that a better experience, I think.
Yeah, I'd say the big emphasis is really on the soft skills, right?
Sure.
Versus the technical skills. We try to avoid technical skills as much as possible during the retreats. or maybe limit it to a small portion.
Right.
Because this is the opportunity really to touch those soft skills that we don't really get throughout the year.
And it's interesting that you say that because we actually had a retreat where we spent a lot of time talking on technical skills. I mean, I just left the room during that time. But,
I wish I had a different.
the feedback from the team was we need and want the soft skills training at events like this, so we can do the technical, on in our day to day.
Well, and let's be real. I mean, the engagement level, if you're in person, is a lot better. You don't have to worry about those distractions. I mean, we're super solid on Zoom, and I think our team is heavily engaged, but not to the same degree you are whenever you're in person.
I agree. I think if you look at a Zoom meeting, even if it's a great Zoom meeting, what you're going to find is that maybe 50% of the room is 80% engaged, and there's always that one people that aren't. But when you're in person, like everybody's engaged, and I also think you just have more time. But you have nothing. You're not walking out of this meeting into a client meeting where even if you're engaged, your head's in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, maybe I need to think about this a little bit, and I need to be prepared for this meeting that's coming out. Like we're engaged in being here. I think that makes a big difference.
Hey, Dan, real quick, throwing back to you, we just won the Great Place to Work award for the second year in a row. Do you think these type of conferences have anything to do with that?
Oh, definitely. And I think actually, being in my role, one of the things I've seen is the fact that we haven't been able to have this conference for a full year, I think has definitely affected morale a little bit. I know we did still win the great places, but I definitely think that I'm looking forward to this the most because that energy we walk out of this with, and then just the team bonds that we've built, and the fact that we just hired so many new team members, I think we're going to come out of this really well. Like we're really going to see some great success because of that.
You imagine that with those two team members are the first time they're working on the job, they're coming to a conference like this.
Yeah.
Is their expectation to be different?
Yeah.
Are we doing this next week?
I know, when I rolled through the agenda with them, they were like, wait, really? That's what we're doing? Okay.
Yeah. I would say, for somebody like myself, I'm a pretty practical person, and I know early on, one, it's an absolutely ton of money. Like you said, It's a big investment. It is everything that we do, we can definitely do on Zoom. So then you're kind of in the back of your mind, it's like, is it worth it? And I think, the energy that you get for it carries for a solid 6 months anyway. And it's high energy. And the other 6 months will get you by until you do another one. And then if you're able to bundle a few in, again, whenever we're talking about our stuff, we have the very high level, which is our directors. And then you kind of, you hone in a little bit and get your CFOs. And then it's, then you get in a little deeper with, the whole team. Being able to kind of mix those up, I think really carries the morale. And so, and I saw that firsthand whenever we had to skip because of COVID. Man, it was a drain on the team, and it definitely hurt us quite a bit. All things aside, I really do think that in person really was a big thing.
Yeah, kind of piggybacking off of that, we're thinking about introducing pod meetings, and you and I talked about that briefly. Can you kind of talk a little bit about what we're thinking with it?
Well, yeah, so, now that would be more of like a working meeting. Mm-hmm. So again, if you start from like high level, like we're at 10,000 feet, directors and, everything we said, then you get the ground level. Inside of our team structure, we have pods where groups of people work really closely together. And it would be cool to give them an opportunity, just them, to make sure, because again, on a team retreat, we're trying to mix people up that don't normally talk to each other. This would be intentional of like, no, the people that do get to work together are really getting at things that they're trying to improve upon and can be a little bit more tactical. So I think it would be really good for us to like make sure that we put one of those in there, probably some midway point after the team retreat, so that they're all getting an opportunity to kind of carry that momentum forward.
Yeah, it's fun with that stuff too then, because all team stuff, you're dealing with a lot of different interests because you're working with 50 different people, and it's not, I don't want to call it generic because everything I do, I try and make not generic, but you're dealing with more baseline type stuff. And then you get into these pods and you can really, why people gravitate toward each other, like each other, might be due to similar interests or things like that. And then now you get to do these super different, unique type of things that suit everyone individually. So it's almost like a collaboration session, but at the same time, in my eyes, kind of like a staff reward in a sense of having an experience while you're in your day-to-day meeting.
For sure, and I think the nice thing, and kind of like two points there, is I think the one, if you look at all of our pods, if you look at our pods across the board, I imagine they all go to 3 different places. Like I can see some going to a place like this in Vegas, I can see some going somewhere in the mountains. For sure, this would just be different based on the personalities. And I think the other part about that too is especially if it's communicated to the team, there's gonna be certain things that are like, you really need to get this done. When we have our pod meeting in November, let's make sure to put that on the agenda. So it gives me the ability to say, okay, we know we need to spend 8 hours documenting our procedures. It's going to be much easier if we just dedicate a whole day to that in November in the mountains, and so that it gives them that kind of opportunity to have it laid out in front of them because everybody has those projects in mind that they're going to want to do.
Yeah, kind of changing topic a little bit, but with the organization of this entire thing, we've got a Lily, we've got a Zach, on the team that's helping this out. And can you kind of talk a little bit about the importance of that? And then if that's really necessary in all the things, or is it truly necessary in all of those?
Absolutely, it is necessary. Well, it depends. If you're like me and Jody, yes, that's why they come along. So it's not just like planning from afar. They actually show up and really help with the coordination. And for us, I think it's really important that it doesn't come from us. Yeah. I think having an outside perspective and allowing people to do these things, it takes away a lot of maybe bias that we have individually, or gearing things towards us completely. So definitely really appreciate Lily's ability to, just leverage different benefits and think of places that we wouldn't normally even consider, and coordinate that whole thing, work with the team. She has an amazing app that tells you what you're doing and when you're doing it. Invaluable, no question. Wouldn't do it any other way. And then with Zach,
and then having her at the event.
Oh, being at the event is, yeah. I mean, hopefully there's not a whole lot going on, but it is really cool being able to, have somebody there to, lean on whenever something does kind of break, or where you're just like, hey, I don't know what to do here, or people issues. I mean, save the day on the director's retreat. One of the team members couldn't get a flight, and so we thought her and her family weren't going to make it. She spent all day just kind of grinding it out and found a flight, was able to make it here. So, I mean, that's one little example, but it goes really a long way. And I would say the same thing with Zach. You need a facilitator. You don't want to be the facilitator. I mean, you might have agendas and things that you want to hit on, but coming from you, from my perspective, 100%, doesn't really go a long way. Whereas with Zach, he can facilitate it. We can also be participants as opposed to being the facilitator, which I think is fun and really enlightening.
Jamie, from your perspective, would you agree on that? Or?
Yeah, I agree 100%. What I was thinking of as you were talking, Adam, was that I think it's a lot of times it's those little things that both these guys think of. I think of Lily when we were in the Bahamas, like the fact that she used her room, and you guys want to check out beach toys, and there's candy, and there's food, and stuff like that. Like, that's something the three of us never would have thought of doing here. So, that's just the little things that, having someone who does this knows that, okay, I've visited the place, I've seen them, I've talked to them, I know they're going to want to have hail to make sandcastles. I'm going to provide that for them. So the small things like that, and exactly the same thing. Like when he comes up with the agenda, the small things he thinks of like, well, what about this? Would this really help the team and really help us have examples of the test? If he found a test for us that we've done a ton of personality tests, but one that he thought of was perfect for our team. And those are the things that, as a group, we probably would just search Google for 5 minutes and been like, all right, what kind of personality test should we do? So
it would be all.
Yeah, definitely don't look at it as a cost. It's definitely an investment and benefit to have both a Lily and a Zach attend the team retreats with you.
Well, I would say even further than that. I mean, the investment is already, you're spending a ton of money in the facility, and it would just be a disaster. 100%. We showed up and it was kind of all on us, or there was some kind of weird loose agenda, or we were working the whole time. Like I said, on the pod thing, I can see that being more of a working meeting, but for the team, it's about the team and the soft skills. So.
Well, there's always something, no matter how meticulous, I'm pretty meticulous, you plan something with travel, from the travel, there are things that just go wrong, no matter how well you plan it out. And I found it so much more useful being on site and being able to talk to people at reservations or different things to get what the situation kind of dealt with right away, rather than trying to call from the States or a different state, trying to get a hold of somebody to fix it. And then it's just this like chain of everyone communicating. Things get done faster being on site.
I think a lot of people out here, a lot of really give you a joke, like, oh, really, you just get all these free vacations. But anybody that's seen Lily on one of these trips, no, this is not a vacation. Right.
Lily's walking around a beach with a MacBook Pro, like, I'm like, holy crap.
This is a lot of work. Yeah, for sure. It's fun to see her in action all the time.
It's a vacation for Zach.
Yeah.
Yeah, walking on the beach with my MacBook, it's so true.
So one final topic I want to go down is obviously this investment is worth it for one reason for us, because we are distributed. But I especially want to talk to the two experts in the room about, for companies that aren't distributed, like, are retreats different? What type of stuff should they think about? So I'm sure a lot of our listeners are not distributed are thinking, oh yeah, this is just for distributed companies. But I'll start with you, Zach. For a non-distributed company, how would you make this retreat a little bit different?
Yeah, I don't know that it is necessarily different. I think stepping outside of the day-to-day of any company is incredibly important. I mean, you look at, Chris McChesney wrote Four Disciplines of Execution. He talks about getting outside of the daily whirlwind. Patrick Lencioni talks about having a quarterly strategic offsite. The best business thinkers, the data's out there. It's really important that we are going away from our normal offices, whether that be on Zoom or brick and mortar, and we're talking about the business. We're talking about the soft skills that we need to build into. And oftentimes those conversations, they just don't happen in as healthy a way, or even as intentional, or even at all, when you're just sitting in the same room that you sit in every single day. So I think it gives you a unique opportunity to cover topics and issues that you just don't normally think of and don't normally talk about. And I think that is the benefit of having an outside person come in, is to help you think about, where are your pain points, what do you need to invest in, what do you need to be talking about, and how can you use this as an opportunity to do that.
Great. Lily?
Can I pull a Jody and just say ditto? Yeah, I always feel like you use quotes or names of authors and stuff like, I don't have that quote.
They're not real.
It's only got 2 or 3 books he's read.
No, I think even if it's basically what Zach said. You go to an office day to day, brick and mortar, same thing. It becomes very routine. And I think what always becomes interesting, and you can think about it even with personal travel that you've done with your family, is that when you take people out of their normal environment and put them in something different, you get to learn a lot more about people and the relationships you have with certain people, for the good or for the worse. And that's what I think ends up making experiences outside the office, even if it's a retreat and it's a 2-hour drive away from where your headquarters are, you're still creating a different dynamic to discover and hopefully unveil some new strengths within your team.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I would say any team needs to have a place outside, but also I also think that the challenges, and it's not always a challenge, but like just sharing an experience together just makes a difference. Like I know going to a show Friday night, I'm sure that's gonna make a big difference in just different relationships and the things we experience together. And I know one of our retreats we did the zip lining. That was a fun thing to talk about, and seeing the animals at the zoo over the zip line is a shared experience that you have. I'm sure you think about that on any retreat you set up. So we're getting close on time here. We'll give everybody a chance to add any final thoughts. I'm excited to go meet everybody at half an hour pretty soon here, but any final thoughts before we go?
Yeah, I think it's just, if you look back through Summit's history, and Jody, I think you agree, every step we've made has been people-centric. Mm-hmm. So every milestone was met with like a particular hire or hires through the whole thing. And that's really what a team retreat is about, is the people and getting to know them and figure out and have those social hours. And I mean, even this podcast, so much better doing it this way. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important investment aside, even if you are brick and mortar, to figure out how to make that happen. I really am. And I was, like I said, practical dude, kind of cheap. You
said it.
Maybe not so much. But I've seen the benefit, and I've seen whenever we weren't able to do it. And I'm telling you, it's a game changer. And our people are our power. And so more that we can, do for them, we've always seen really good dividends from that.
I agree. I think it's a great investment, and I just come back to that turning points thing. I think every time we've had one of these, it's been a big turning point in the life of our company. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to our all-team retreat later this fall, because I know that they're going to be great investments in our team and their people, and ultimately in the clients and the work that we do. So yeah, I'm excited to kick this off, and really excited about the content we have, and obviously Lily has planned an amazing experience.
I mean, these are just fun. Like, I look forward to coming to these events, and I think when you set caliber of what the events are going to look like, what the meetings are going to look like, everyone always raves about the content Zach presents. People get excited to keep coming back and want more of it, and are disappointed when they can't make it. So, I mean, they're a blast. So I'm excited for this week.
Yeah, and I would say kind of in that tone there, with a lot of retreats, people look for reasons to get out. I was in that example in the corporate world. I was looking for a way. We have to go there. My wife didn't want to go, that type of thing. With these retreats, it's the opposite. People can't wait to actually be involved. And that's the really cool dynamics of it. And I think that's what really kind of builds our culture. People really enjoy being around the people they work with. And this gives them an opportunity to kind of let their hair down a little bit, for those that have hair, and kind of relax and kind of be themselves, and have a beer with each other, or have a soda or a tea, whatever their drink of choice is, and really just kind of relax and have fun. And humor and fun is part of our core values, and I think that really resembles a lot within these retreats. And it's really not an optional thing, especially if you're remote. It's a requirement. If you want to be successful, if you want to grow with the growth rate that we've had, you really need to have these retreats to keep everybody completely motivated, completely on target to making sure things happen.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, but that's one thing I think COVID we've really learned from, is that these retreats are so important. I mean, the fact that we went so long without one, like I said, it definitely affected us as a company, how we've grown as much as we would have had one last year. And I think on the second part of it is people are asking for it. People are like, when are we getting that retreat schedule? Where are we going? And I think Joey's point out, I think that happens everywhere. I think it's because of the events we set up, because of the environment we use on these retreats, it makes it very desirable for people. So I would definitely say that.
Yeah, probably one last thing though, I do want to plug these two. Obviously, they work with us on kind of a part-time basis, so there is some availability there, and testimonial, these wouldn't be the same without them. So you can borrow them for a little bit. You can. So get them while you can, because they are game changers for the event.
And we'll put all
that in writing.
We'll transcribe it. We will put the show notes in the show notes. We'll make sure to have both of you guys' contact information. We'll reach out. All right, everyone. Thanks, everybody. It's fun. Yep.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving business success. We're here to be a resource in this ever-changing industry.